If you stay here with us now, we will, however, ask a very, very important question, namely, why Berlin? Bringing the future of finance from the German capital into the world. Now, this panel is hosted by Berlin Partner for Business and Technology. And before I invite the panelists to join me, let me just give you some facts and figures, because why indeed Berlin? According to the Startup Ecosystem Ranking Report 2020 and Startup Map Berlin 2020, Berlin comes in second, right behind London. It is also ranked as the best city in the world for millennials, based on factors like business ecosystem essentials, openness and recreation. That is from the Global Startup Ecosystem Report 2020. And the same report also says that Berlin has grown into a European hub for IoT and blockchain, with particular strength in fintech, AI and big data. And last but not least, Berlin is currently home to about 500 fintech startups and scale-ups, according to Startup Map Berlin 2020. So there are many more facts and data that one could share, and I'm sure our panelists have some ready for you. Let's talk to some of those now who chose Berlin for their activities. And I'm doing it clockwise, which right now is this way. I should do it. Exactly. Starting with the gentleman to my right when I look on the screen, Achim Ölgard, CEO of the East German Banking Association and initiator of the Berlin Finance Initiative, which is an initiative set out to be the voice of Berlin's hub for technology-based finance and digital economy. And of course, you can read up about our speakers. Achim has been working in the financial industry and advises tech startups for over 20 years now. And he's also a lawyer, which, given the implications of some of those topics, probably comes in quite handy. So Achim, good to have you with us. I would also like to welcome Enrico Onimula. That's right below on the screen, the head of innovation at finleap. So again, finleap, here we are. And there he orchestrates the business development for Europe's leading fintech ecosystem. He's also a lecturer at the International School of Management, and he leads finleap support for the D-Hub Fintech Berlin. That's certainly something we will also talk about. Enrico, good to have you with us. And last but not least, a gentleman who represents the company that Mr. Balz in his keynote earlier mentioned, namely Sweden's Klarna. Thomas Wagner, country lead DACH at Klarna. So that means he's responsible for all commercial activities in Germany, Austria and Switzerland. He started his career at Rocket Internet, where he helped to build and grow Zalando and Westwing, among others. And before Klarna, Wagner, or Thomas, let's call him Thomas, was the founder and CEO of an automotive tech company. Might come in handy during this discussion. So good to have all of you with us, and let's just pick it up right from the beginning. Why Berlin? Because I happen to know that when it comes to finance, Frankfurt is the financial capital of Germany, not Berlin. But now we say Berlin, here is the future. Why is that? Achim, do you want to start?
Well, thank you, Monica, for your excellent start, and thanks for having me here. Bitkom and DigiFin 21 in Berlin, thanks for this really great conference. Well, why Berlin? I start with Bill Gates. Yeah, I have to. 1994, yeah, the famous words, banking is necessary. Yeah, banks are not. What did he say in these words? Yeah? On one hand, he says banking and financial services serve society, corporates, and individuals. Financial institutions do not serve themselves. Second, banking in its core is intermediation with transformation, money creation. Well, interesting topic, maybe money creation. All types of financing, investment, and payment services are the outcome. And since it all comes to zero and ones, digitalization is the topic. And the amount of digital bankers, fintechers, digital regulators, is growing at a high pace, and Berlin's role as Europe's hub for technology is growing dramatically, and we can see it from the figures and what I know from the ecosystem. Everybody's in a war for talent.
Enrico, anything to add? Anything Achim left out?
First of all, again, thank you, D-Hub, thank you, Bitkom, thank you, Berlin Partners, for the invite. I think, Achim, you already mentioned a lot. I would also really start with talent, people. This is how finleap started. This, I think, how a lot of all ventures in the beginning start with a couple of people coming together and trying to found something. I think when we talk about fintech, there are also a lot of the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem was already established in Berlin when fintech really hit the curve. So we were able to build on network, we were able to build on success stories already. And lastly, I think with all the success, will the right people, also the capital is coming. So the VCs funding is coming to town, and therefore I think the three main focus areas, people, the ecosystem, as well as capital.
Well, then Thomas, why Berlin for Klarna?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for first of all, foremost for the introduction and for having me as well. It's an interesting question. So I think, as Enrico and Achim also mentioned, I think it's the ecosystem as such, which basically combines a lot of different factors that are success factors for the city itself, and for a reason for why so many fintech companies also established themselves. So did Klarna, basically, right? So I think it's the geographical location. That's one thing which for us was also quite important, the geographical location within Europe. So it's quite centrally located. It has also, if you look at really Berlin as a city, it has a vibrant, cultural scene, a scene that also attracts a lot of young talent, young people from different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, but also professional backgrounds. And what we realized is that when we sort of also started to shift more from a payments company to a fintech, so technological company, we were at the hunt for talent, right? And I think that holds true for many companies also outside the fintech space. And we wanted to get to a place and basically establish ourselves in Berlin to actually have the possibility to tap into that ecosystem, to tap into that talent ecosystem, as to what Enrico said, and also to sort of build a network within Berlin, the investor scene, the startup scene, to also always be on top of things, on top of new trends, and to see what new products and solutions are evolving, because obviously that's something which we also identify ourselves with, right? We want to grow as well, even though we are quite a grown up already, but I think there are still innovation around that we have to also be aware of.
All right, there's always room for more. But you all mentioned talent quite often now as basically the USP for Berlin. Was there anything else, especially for you, Thomas and Enrico, that helped you to basically find your feet or expand when coming to Berlin, in terms perhaps of infrastructure, funding, kind of support you get, I don't know, government side, city side, anything that played a role there?
If I may start, I mean, you raised already a couple of points. I mentioned the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, which was already established when we arrived, when finleap arrived. So I think network, the people that know the business were already around, as well as the first wave of venture capitalists. So I think this is in the beginning is for young companies very, very important. And we have to say that our message was always that we go with incumbents and with other partners and try to bring the industry forward and try to digitize it. And these helped us as well, right? So we were able to partner with the leading institutions in the beginning to get the first, not only funding, but the first revenue to start businesses like Solaris Bank. So I think the right partners, not only as on the people side, but also on the customer side, if not only in Berlin, then these are the main facts.
Right.
Yeah, maybe from my side to add to that. So I think also from a Klarna perspective, since we are, originally Swedish company from Stockholm, we basically realized quite quickly that when expanding to other markets outside of Sweden or the Nordic countries, that also acquisitions are a quite good way for us to gain market share and to basically expand more quickly. So not only organic growth, but also through acquisitions. And that's what we basically did also within the German context. A couple of years back, 2014, we acquired the Support GmbH. which was based back then out of Munich, which is also why we also have a Munich hub or a Munich location within the German or Dutch-speaking markets or German-speaking markets. But also for Berlin, we identified that, for instance, BillPay, a company also we acquired in 2017, which was originating from the Berlin ecosystem with several investors that are well known in the ecosystem back then. And obviously, we identified that there was innovation built, there was viable products built, and also talent there that we could tap into and acquire and basically put on the under the Klarna umbrella. And so I think that is also one other perspective to look at things when looking at Berlin.
And of course, I have to ask Achim, because we were talking about that weeks ago beforehand when we first touched base. I mean, the Ostdeutsche Bankenverband doesn't exactly cry out as a fintech innovative platform. So Achim, please tell us how digital, how fintech is this Bankenverband? What do you do?
Yeah. Now, first of all, we have in the focus Berlin's Finance Initiative, and I'm happy that you asked this question because it gives a little bit the entrance point into what the colleague said, and especially Enrico also mentioned, where we all come from. The Deutsche Bankverband is a Berlin banking association and has also all the beautiful eastern parts of Germany under the scope. And it's all the private financial sector is in the memberships. And we lately decided to open up our membership to fintechs and welcome the first members, because there's a lot of blowing towards wind blowing towards cooperation, towards sandboxing and learning between banks and fintechs, and this is not so new. But it is much more interesting to learn for most of you. But the banks, they are not so much in the focus of the whole DigiFin conference. Especially in Berlin, have a good stand. Like, for example, TradeGate Exchange as a trading platform is Europe's largest real-time and trading and settlement system for private investors. So if you do something on Comdirect and others, you always end up at TradeGate Exchange. Or members like Quirin have wonderful robots. Deutsche Bank was originally founded in Berlin many years ago and runs Innovation Lab and is at the forefront of open banking and other tech trends. Commerzbank, with a mine incubator, one of the most innovative incubators, has many DLT pilots and so on. The tech teams of banks in Berlin are partnering with the tech scene, the fintech scene, and not only on innovation, but on the other hand, also on the growth financing. And it is part of our mission and personally my mission as Achim, to build bridges in Berlin because we see a high need for getting better. And I will end at this point. We had the rankings. We saw, you said, Monica, in the beginning, this is only partly true. The startup index in this Berlin dropped 6 points to 16. Fintech is nice at number 2 in Europe, worldwide number 9. And 1 point is connectivity that is not so strong, not only of Berlin into the world, but also within Berlin. And maybe we talk on the Berlin Finance Initiative a little bit later.
Absolutely, I'll get to that. But actually, I would have followed up straight away. But now you opened another door because you really put the finger in that why Berlin talent and the ecosystem. And it's also fantastic. That's why you're all here. But this is not the end of the road. There are challenges. And I would like to know from Enrico and from Thomas, first of all, what kind of environment is there currently for scale-ups? I know that early stage funding in Berlin is up to $2.1 billion. That is also on a EY barometer from last year. So there is some funding there. But what about scale-ups to grow and feel at home? I mean, is Berlin a place to stay? Is there a place to grow here? And what challenges are there? Where should we be better, Enrico?
I think we are here to stay. First of all, yes, we are growing as the startup scene, and we hope obviously that the venture capital, the funding scene grows with us. we are getting more and more mature. I think we have like, I don't know, last week alone had 2 or 3 new fintechs coming, new unicorn fintechs coming in, not only in Berlin, but I think a couple of them are based in Berlin. We are now more and more getting towards maybe where Thomas and Dana are already. What I think is still lacking is the right funding to take us to the next stage. I think Achim mentioned that the right partners are here, innovation hubs from banks and other institutions. We have the right university, we have the government. Just the discussion that we had before shows that. But if we're looking at the unicorn fundings that happened, they're all done by very, very distant investors. They can invest into Berlin, so that's a good thing. But I mean, let's hope that we can bring more also European investors in that can grow the ecosystem even further.
Thomas, how do you experience that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we as Klarna established basically our tech hub almost a year ago in Berlin. So where we basically really made the decision to bring in talent on the engineering side, on the product side, but also within other competencies. And we've built up basically a campus for roughly 750, 760 people, out of which more than 50% almost is or are people from those competencies I just mentioned, right? So it's a very tech-heavy talent pool that we tapped into. But as a fun fact, 1 year later, we have already outgrown that environment, sort of that campus facility, right? So that shows how much we've grown on the one hand, but it also, I think, is an indicator for how competitive the talent acquisition ecosystem in Berlin is getting nowadays. Since, I mean, it's, you know, you have Zalandos of the world also being in Berlin, being based out of Berlin. And I think we as Klarna, we actually appreciate competition, because at the end of the day, that holds true for business models, products, but also for talent, right? So if you want to be at the forefront, you also have to basically offer sort of the best environment for talent. And I think going beyond that, also what Enrico mentioned on the financing side or investment side, I think looking back, you know, when I was also working for another company in Berlin, or based out of Berlin back in the days, I think there was a completely different ecosystem where there was much less really early stage funding around. There was much less also funding for Series A, B, etc. And I think what I've experienced, not necessarily only within Klarna, but also beyond that, is that we are able to attract more and more international investors, also coming from the US and other parts of the world, which I think is a very good sign in general for the ecosystem and for the different players that are around.
Talking of different players and getting connected, because that's something Achim mentioned earlier as well. We got a question in from one of the viewers. Achim, would it be easier for fintechs to be in Frankfurt? We're basically picking up again. To be in Frankfurt, considering that the need to get connected and to have old banks as customers?
Well, I guess it's somebody from Frankfurt, or but I'm happy to answer this. The Berlin Finance Initiative is not about having a competition between analog hubs. It is about Frankfurt is calling, but who is Frankfurt calling? And Berlin doesn't have a number. And I have a couple more questions that Berlin cannot answer institutional-wise. So directly to the question, yes, of course, Frankfurt is a good hub, but the financing rounds haven't been that strong in Frankfurt lately. Hamburg did an interesting job, and somehow, sorry, Frankfurt, the reputation of the city also for living and so on is something important. And I want to make the point right here. London is not anymore in the EU, and it's a third country. And why does Berlin not attract even more fintechs for the European Union being into the internal market? So you're more than welcome and invited to come to Berlin, but it is not so much where your headquarters is. So it's this mindset thing, and the banks, they are everywhere anyways. So it's my answer on this.
You just mentioned one is no longer in the European Union. I mean, we can the white elephant. I mean, Brexit happened, and it doesn't include services. Certainly not financial services. That also means that there's a lot of talent somewhere on an island right now. That would do Berlin good. Would Berlin benefit from that talent, Enrico? What do you see there?
Definitely. I think the war of talent was mentioned already in this panel 3 or 4 times, and I don't even want to count over the entire DigiFin. Not only the talent, but I think also fintechs are moving, right? They want to have access to the European Union. They can have it in a couple of cities, but most or a couple are still choosing Berlin, not only because we have a very nice city to move to. I think we actually.
But what would they bring? What would they bring in order to further what is here right now? I agree. We established that this is a great place to do work and to basically found or start up and even grow. But what would that additionally bring in order, or what is it that we're lacking that they could bring?
I don't know if it's something that we are lacking, but we strongly believe, and I think Thomas also mentioned that in competition and also in enlarging the ecosystem. So new players bring new ideas, bring new people, and therefore drive innovation further. And this is where we started it for finleap 6 years ago. And we are very much looking forward to the next 6 years. So I think it's just pushing this cycle of innovation further.
Monica, if I may, or
please,
Thomas.
yes. I was just about I was about to come to you right now, and you just storm off now.
It's on one hand the C-level, and we have very nice developments that from Silicon Valley C-level comes to Berlin with good reasons, and it's the expert level. Definitely look at the long lists of programmers, designers, and so on. Well, Berlin has a good living standard, and I welcome the partners from London to come into the ecosystem in Berlin. Of course, you can found something new, but what already exists has a high potential to let it grow.
I want to get to the point. I mean, you stand for the Berlin Finance Initiative, and I keep wondering, why do we need that initiative? Because obviously there must be room for improvement. And I still haven't quite got to the bottom of it. What is it that needs to improve? Is it for startups? Is it for scale-ups? Where is something that Thomas and Enrico, perhaps from their expertise, would say, Berlin is good now, but it could lose its edge if this and that doesn't happen. And I assume that this is also what the Berlin Finance Initiative is about. So, Achim, what is it that you're actually after?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Monica, for this wonderful question. First of all, it's an open platform. So it is important that intelligence comes in from all sides. And what is definitely missing is on the political side, mindset for this. Think, you had it in other panels on crypto assets, digital currencies, decentralized finance. Do we have the right regulatory framework? And Berlin is not only Berlin as a city, Berlin is also the rule maker for Germany and gives a strong impetus on the EU, on Brussels. And many things happened already, but there needs to be an ongoing process. And Berlin is the DLT, the blockchain place in Germany. And so we need to bundle this more together, and I'm happy to do this together with the Hub. We're working on this. Other things are there's no number to call, and I said it earlier. Berlin has to bundle things in order to get a voice on this. And if you talk about there's a matrix on competitiveness, what is good, what is not so good. taxation, and it's not a Berlin thing. It's a thing. We have to bring all the knowledge from the tech sector into the politics making. And also the centers from Frankfurt and so on, they look on us in Berlin. So what is your answer on this? And so would be take too much time now going down the list on critical competitive points. It goes very much down into national and then EU regulation, but also into the city itself, that you get more support, more support from the political side in Berlin, that thinks fintech is an ecosystem that is somehow growing by itself. I think we need to do more dialogue on this.
Enrico, perhaps you want to follow up there, because I mean you're partnered there with Berlin partner there on this D-Hub. What is the aim there, and why is it necessary?
I mean, we as finleap call ourselves an ecosystem, and it was perfectly fitting to join D-Hub and become the fintech ecosystem, Fintech Hub in Berlin, connecting to 12 more or 11 more hubs across Germany to again bring people together, as Achim mentioned, bring the right people from government, university, tech, and business together to drive something further. You talked about challenges, regulatory challenges. I think the panel before touched that quite nicely. So we don't and I don't need to repeat myself. But looking at this, we are in Berlin. We can drive the regulatory changes, but drive them European-wide, right? So don't focus on Germany. Don't focus on Berlin. We wanna be a European hub, and that's we need to take it in our own hands in order to become better and get the right legislation. And maybe one more comment related to the war of talents. What we also see is and Achim mentioned taxation, the how to incentivize our talent is maybe for corporate way easier, but for startups, we all look at our burn. So increasing fixed salaries is always difficult for us. So we do it via ESOPs, via share programs. And I think there are countries in the EU already that have definitely better legislation on that. And
name one.
I think the Nordics, just to start with that. Looking again to Thomas, but yeah, this is just one point where we as D-Hub, Ramin together with your cookies, all try to push, connect, and understand, build bridges between the legislator and us.
Yeah, because Thomas, I wanted to bring you in because Klarna, being a Swedish company and hailed as one of the big lighthouses there. What is a country like Sweden? What are the Nordics doing differently? What are they doing perhaps better? And where could Berlin, in that case, learn a thing or two?
Well, I think it's hard to say really very particularly what are the things that certain cities are doing better than others, but I think it very much comes down to also mindset, as to what Achim mentioned before, right? So I think we've come a long way already in Berlin in order to open up mindset from different sort of players within the ecosystem. So not only the startups themselves, but also investors, political sort of regulators, etc. But I think mindset-wise, what I experience in the Nordics and also in Sweden, where we are coming from, is that there is a culture really around enforcing and really strengthening startups from the get-go, right? So really building that ecosystem, both from a talent perspective, from an educational perspective, and also making it easier for talent to really also start a career in startup companies, in young companies, whereas to Enrico's point, those companies cannot pay those fixed salaries, right? So there need to be other incentives. And I think that taxation bit is it's a completely different topic, right? It's a big topic, but I think it's a super important and valid topic, right? Because if we don't solve that, we will in the long run really lose out compared to other markets. And I'm not only looking into the US, but I'm also looking more and more into Asia, where a lot of innovation is happening nowadays, and where innovation is happening with great speed. And I think in order to really keep the talent and not have it move away outside of not only Berlin or Stockholm, but outside of the EU, I think that is one crucial part of it, right? So that is a little bit how I see it.
Any ideas how to ensure that there isn't a talent drain? Anything that you can see that is imminent in terms of change, maybe? I don't know. I mean, young people are even more restless than older folk, and things have to happen yesterday rather than today. So what would have to happen within the next year, let's say, in order to still be top attractive and competitive, also especially with Asian markets?
Monica, I think the big advantage for Europe is the values of freedom, yeah, and this internal market. Yeah? And I don't want to push it too far, but even Europe is an old museum. Yeah? It speeds up dramatically on technology, and so there's also some quite interesting regulation on the way, like the MiCA regulation, just giving a world standard for the crypto assets. Okay, many may say, well, it goes too far, but that between the freedom, the places where you live and work, plus a clear mindset on standard that is working for many years in a world of changes, this is something that is interesting. And I don't want to make the world tour, but Europe has a lot to offer because the knowledge base and the industry base, Industry 4.0, plus the financing sector, there's so much happening, and it's just a fun place to be. So it's not the answer what you have to do, what is already there. And on the taxation and other things, yes, the next government will definitely go for this, because that's an important point.
I'll just keep you up to speed. We have 4 minutes left. I tried to squeeze 2 questions in. So whoever is first comes first. What does the future of the Fintech Hub Berlin look like post-pandemic? I'm not going to ask you how you got through the pandemic. You all look fine to me, and I think your business is still up and running, so we don't have to go into details there. But what do you see the future of the Fintech Hub Berlin when it comes to innovation and talent? We already covered. Who would like to go first? Enrico, you look like you want to go first.
I mean, a couple of points. I would say that we grew even closer. So it doesn't matter anymore where you are. I think this brings a lot of innovation with it itself. What we are currently looking at too is where do we work, right? Is it in offices? The hub, you mentioned the hub initiative is located in our offices, but we are working very heavily on how to expand it into the digital world, something like DigiFin just happening now, more and more connections happening in the virtual world. So I think this brings us together, brings more innovation, and yeah, this is something that we are currently looking into.
What about you, Thomas?
I can actually only second that. So I think what we've learned over the course of the pandemic, with the course of the past 12 to 18 months, is really that there are also other ways nowadays of how to cooperate, how to work together, how to work not only internally together among ourselves, but also how to work with partners, with merchants, with really customers really. And the expectations have also changed, right? So there is no longer, at least looking at the broader scheme of things, there's no longer the expectation from a customer's perspective that you need to come to me and sit next to me and pitch whatever you want to pitch to me, but it actually can be in a digital world, in a digital setup as well, as we do it today, right? So it's possible, and there are ways of how this can be done in a very meaningful way. So that's one thing. The other thing is obviously ways of working in general internally inside a company, inside an organization, where we've putting a lot of emphasis and also thinking around or in is how can we really, and that again comes a little bit to the point of talent, right? To retain talent, because there's also other expectations now after the pandemic of how I as an individual want to actually contribute to a company, how I want to work with a company. And I want to have certain flexibilities that I probably wasn't very much aware of, I wasn't pushing for before. And so we are trying, and we're trying to set up a working environment where everyone feels really comfortable with or in, and where there is a combination of flexibility around working from home or from wherever you want, basically, and then also having dedicated days, for instance, where you come to the office, where you meet with your team, where you meet with your peers and have that social personal interaction. So I think that also then translates, if you will, to how offices, and also to Berlin, right? How offices will be set up, will be designed, where there'll be more meeting spots, etc. So there are a lot of things connected to actually this post-pandemic work situation, I think.
Sounds very interesting. Can I come and work for you? Sounds really cool. Achim, what about you?
Well, I'll make it short with you on the timing. The financial services have been part of the solution in the pandemic, and we're ready to deliver from day one. And this is good testing, and of course a lot of investment in even more technology. And yeah, so by myself, I lost a couple of kilos there because I cycle all the time and a lot to the office back and forth.
That makes at least two of us. Well, yes, I'm afraid the clock is our enemy right now for the final round. Whether if in 10 years we were to meet again and ask why Berlin, would that actually still be worth a question? You can just nod or shake your head, perhaps. We have 10 seconds for that. So if this was still a panel 10 years from now, why Berlin? Is that still an issue? Yes. No. Undecided.
Definitely. Yeah.
I would say I hope that we are more talking about a European hub.
Okay.
With Fintech as one or Berlin as one light bulb, but let's try to bring us even closer.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you to the three of you, Achim, Thomas, Enrico. Thank you so much for your time.